Have you made a mistake in your life? Have you done things that you're not proud of? Perhaps you wound up in jail, looking at a bar, looking at a cell that you're not proud of, having to share a bunk with some other dude that's done something bad. That doesn't define you. That doesn't stop you from living your life and making changes in your life unless you allow that to happen. We make mistakes in our life, and we either choose to learn from it, move forward, better ourselves, and not allow ourselves to fall back into those mistakes, or we continue to punish ourselves and make the same mistakes or worse mistakes because we don't allow ourselves to come out of the mental prison that we put ourselves into. You have an opportunity in your life today to make a choice to do something different. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again while expecting different results. And unfortunately, the majority of us live this expectation that something greater will happen, that you deserve something different. But in reality, you deserve everything that you get based off of the actions that you take. What do you want from your life? Can you define who it is that you want to be remembered as a man at your funeral? What do you want people to say about who you were will be determined by the actions that you take. And until you can define who that man is, you will always be left making the same mistakes over and over again. What do you want from yourself? Do you want to be better? Do you want your wife to be proud of the man that she married? Do you want your kids to look up to an example that is exemplary? You can do that. But you have to hold yourself accountable. You have to be willing to be uncomfortable and to be willing to accept the fact that you made a mistake. But to realize that you're not a failure. Being a failure is quitting. It's giving up. It's accepting defeat, that you're not going to move forward anymore and you're going to live in the mental prison that you've created for yourself. This doesn't have to be your reality. And you have the ability to make a change. And one way that we make a change is by surrounding ourselves with men that are willing to hold us accountable. Men that are willing to point out the things and the opportunities that we have in front of us and give us the opportunity to do something about it. But it's up to you to grasp that by the reins and hold on for dear life and to take the action that's needed for you to become the man that you've always inspired to be. I want to thank you for joining us at the Man Up and Own It podcast, where we deal with experiences that men face and situations that are uncomfortable. We supply the information for you to live a better quality of life and to give you examples of men that have made changes in their life to make a better outcome for themselves. Today, I'm shared with a great friend that has made great changes in his life. My friend Ty. What's up, bro?
Thanks for having me, Chris.
Absolutely. Hey, man, we met on Facebook.
Yeah.
You know?
10 months, a year ago?
Yeah. And you have lived a very interesting life, haven't you?
Yeah. We all have in our own ways, though, right?
Right, absolutely. But you have branded yourself in a way that most people might be a little uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
One of the situations that we actually found ourselves in where we maybe might have butted heads and actually established a better relationship was based on your ink, your tattoos and your viewpoint on them. Do you remember that?
Yeah, that wasn't Tab involved in that too?
Absolutely.
Yep, I remember that conversation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that was kind of at the beginning.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
We had known each other for a little bit and we had talked on the phone and stuff, but I think that was a defining moment in our relationship that maybe got you to open up and see yourself in a little bit different light.
100%.
Now, can you give the audience a little view on your background?
So my background, spent most of my 20s incarcerated, which was predated with adoption and foster system. So addiction took me out for about 12, 15 years. And it's, once you stop running from the darkness and you understand that within your darkness, there's a light and that God is waiting to guide you through that darkness, through that light, everything changes.
Absolutely. But it took for you to hold yourself accountable and for you to take action in that, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Now, how difficult was that for you?
Hardest decision I ever made in my entire life was the night that I left Utah and I traveled across country without any of the resources I need to meet my birth mom, but most importantly, to get off of drugs. Because I was literally at a fork in the road with literally two options: prison or do something crazy. Oh. And leaving, meeting my birth mom, drive across country, no insurance on my car, no license. I just left.
Yeah.
It was the best decision I ever made.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So how long have you been clean?
A little over 3 years.
3 years. Now, what was your drug of choice?
Meth.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I was in that situation too at a certain point in my life, and I threw almost everything away. Now I've had a longer ride of sobriety, but no matter what time period it is, it doesn't stop the fact of the desire of the addiction, right?
Yep.
So it's an active choice that you make every day to be better and to do something different.
100%, 1000%. And it's just different. It's strange too, because you're making the same choice, but when you love yourself and when you don't love yourself, it's just interesting how those choices, the contrast. It's the same choice, but it looks different.
Absolutely, right? And how do you feel about yourself now?
I feel good, obviously, better than I have in the past. Although at the same time, it's like you can always do better.
Absolutely.
So it's being realistic with yourself, not having unrealistic expectations of yourself, and not letting yourself, undervalue the progress, the efforts that you are making. And so that's kind of where I've had to be this past little bit, is like, give yourself some grace, give yourself some mercy. This is a journey. It's not a sprint. Look at where you were, where you are. It doesn't matter where anybody else is. It's almost like you got to put those blinders on.
Absolutely. But you also have to give yourself credit where credit is due. I liked how you brought that out. Oftentimes, especially for us as men, we either don't give ourselves credit for what we've done, or we overvalue the things that we've done and we blow it up out of proportion.
Yeah.
I think you've done a really good job. I like watching your journey. I like watching what you post up online and seeing how you have progressed. I think it's really cool.
Well, and I know you've seen it too, because we've had some conversations, and you even brought it up on conversation number 2, and you're like, hey, now it's time to get your general chart put together.
Yeah, right. And I fully believe that we either create the life that we want, or we live a life that others are creating for us.
Yep. And
part of that is fully visualizing what it is that you want to be remembered as. And that was kind of the thing that we had talked about, who is it that you want to be? And you talk about using tools and using things to help benefit you, but you had to fully take on the resonance of the general, the one that commands the army, right?
Yeah.
So can you tell the people out there what it is that you do?
So I'm in marketing, and that's obviously, if you know anything about marketing, that's like the most broad term you could ever possibly use. So right now it'd be outreach, cold outreach, and like AI-based strategies. We got some crazy techs coming out right now. Like, you can mass personalize videos at scale. Like, I'm working with someone, we're digitizing them so they no longer have to like actually get in front of a camera to, send personal messages to clients or to prospects. So it's just crazy now what you can do in probably within 2 years, you'll be able to replicate yourself. Have a meeting in a Zoom here, have a real meeting here, but then have another one over here that's like, qualifying leads. So it's just crazy. So that's kind of a broad spectrum of an arena.
Do you think that will increase the value of the actual in-person session?
Yes. Yep. There's going to be, I don't know. I'm not a future teller, but knowing what's real and what's not real, unless you're in person, is going to get harder and harder and harder and harder. And so within the next couple of years, just where the technology is now, I could fool good portion of the population. And so, I would definitely agree with that.
I think that's a valid opportunity for men right now, especially the ones that are really into finding a girlfriend, finding a mate or something, to realize that you could be talking to a digital person. You could be talking to Bob that's portraying himself as Bridget.
Yep.
You know,
they're already doing it right now. They're doing OnlyFans, but it's like AI avatars, and they have like AI driven conversations. And these dudes, like, they're making like tens of thousands of dollars a month, and it's not even a real person that's giving attention and, that bond to men. So,
and that's
crazy.
And that's an insecurity that men face because they're unwilling to make a connection with the relationship, whether it be with another woman or another man. Like, having real conversations like what we do can be uncomfortable for a lot. Do you find having conversations with other men difficult, or do you see opportunity for men to improve that?
One of the big nuggets, I would say, from being incarcerated, I spent 1 year, 23-hour day lockdown with a man. That's where I got all my tattoos because there was nothing else to do. Pretty boring. So opening up, communicating, especially with other men from a stranger standpoint, obviously, but like creating that circle of trust and the people that you can count on and depend on, and being willing to be open and vulnerable and have those conversations that, your wife or your significant other can't necessarily be on the same level because different genders, different, life lenses. So without a doubt, 1,000%.
Yeah. Now, what ways have you found that have helped you be able to communicate, not only from a marketing standpoint, but just as a man in general, facing the situations and the experiences that you faced?
Well, if there's one thing I know from my past mistakes, it's that the lack of communication is a common denominator in a lot of my problems in life. And that can be just as much as running away from your own darkness instead of facing it. So it's another kind of, variation of that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's the biggest breakdown in all relationship is the communication. The minute that we stop being able to provide information or ideas to another individual about what we foresee or how we feel or what we think, then we start doing a disservice to them because we're not giving them who we are, the best versions of ourselves.
Well, would you say that communication is one of the highest forms of respect?
Absolutely.
If you respect someone, you'll communicate with them. And I think it's internal too, because when you start to respect yourself, you start to communicate with yourself even better.
Absolutely.
And that's when the self-awareness comes in, and that's when the transformation starts.
So one of the things that I talk a lot about is what our first line of communication is. And it's funny that you talked about respect, and it's the way that we respect ourselves. How do we take care of ourselves is the first way that we communicate with other people about who we are and what we offer to them. And someone that doesn't take care of themselves is not likely to be able to communicate appropriately to somebody else. Did you find that in prison that there was a lot of people that didn't necessarily communicate non-verbally and verbally?
Oh, yeah. Lack of education is probably the premise of the entire system.
Interesting.
And so it's been proven as well that education is the number one reducer of recidivism, and recidivism is the rate of reoffense. And that's why they blocked education. So that's a whole nother thing. They did that for good, 25, 30 years. until recently. So not knowing how to communicate because maybe they didn't have the good examples. They came from broken homes. Parents, dad wasn't there. So they didn't get that full, into adulthood experience. And so they're misguided, lots of foster youth. Over 50% of people are there for addiction. So if they're having an addiction problem, they probably got some traumas. 9 times out of 10, there's some underlying reasons. They're not getting any treatment. If they get better and they don't come back, the system goes out of business. And so they're not going to actually help them get better. And so that's why our churn rate, 77% come back within 5 years, 44% within 1 year. It is the best return-based business to exist in America.
It sounds very similar to our healthcare system.
Yeah, keep them sick.
I have this little coin phrase.
Scamdemic?
A cure patient is a lost client. And in reality, for the prison reform system, if you actually reform the people and make them feel empowered that they can go out and be a positive contributing member of society, they're not going to come back. And if they don't come back, the state doesn't fund them. And if the state doesn't fund them, where do they go?
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Which is a very sad thing. I know you do some work with people that get out of prison. You want to talk about that a little bit?
So, I'm not in this moment doing these big, bad, grand, cool things. I have done things. I have plans of doing things.
Okay.
So when I started college at the Ohio State University, I got accepted to a government program out in Washington, D.C. And so I went and I was the first felon to intern for this Presidential Institute, Ronald Reagan Institute and Presidential Library, which is ironically who started the war on drugs. So it's almost like that sweet,
it's like karmutic retribution.
Yeah. So, and since then I went there, I made an impact. I actually left with an internship with the Presidential Institute. And then that turned into doing a public facing roundtable or a public facing panel and a private roundtable. And we brought justice reform actors from all over the country. We flew them in, and then we had this whole event because we were talking about you're talking about communication, and then I was bringing lack of education, just generally speaking, is basically the main cause of why people are in there. In 1994, they literally made it illegal, even though less than 1% of FAFSA funding went to people that were incarcerated. They made it illegal because that's when the research started to come out. And just now, December of 2020, they made it legal again. But what's happened is the hierarchical, the internal structure of the system won't allow for that to actually be an integrated part of the system, because the medium, max, and minimum already cuts off, a good half of the population from access to those resources. They have security concerns, which just means they don't want to put the manpower out there.
Well, they're afraid, right?
Yeah.
We live our lives now on comfort, and if we're afraid, then we're less likely to permit something to happen or to be in existence, which is unfortunate because even like yourself, you're pitted to not succeed, but unfortunately for them, you are succeeding.
Yeah.
And I think it's really cool. It's cool to watch your journey, because you're a prime example of what someone can do if they're willing to take the actions.
And given the opportunity.
Well,
most importantly is the people. I had a mentor who metaphorically put it this way. He's like, sometimes you have to extend your metaphorical ladder down. So people who otherwise wouldn't have the ability to grab up to that ring, and you can pull them up and you can get them over, those obstacles. And that might be the only obstacle to actually prevent them from going up. Right. And I literally experienced that earlier this year. Okay. Earlier this year, one of my mentors, that's what I experienced. He helped me remove this. He didn't just give me anything. It was a valued exchange, but that literally is the reason that I'm now, almost a year later where I'm at now. So I'm not doing anything big and grand, but I had to make it through these humps to even get to, a nice little good flow.
I would challenge that idea. the idea that you're not doing anything big and grand.
Well,
And the reason I say
see what you're
that,
saying.
because if you go back to when you were sitting in that jail cell and you weren't having nothing to do except get tattoos, what you're doing right now would be big and grand.
Yeah.
So there's a prime example for you out there right now to do not diminish the things that you are doing right now. Give yourself credit, give yourself value, but understand that if you consistently and persistently keep working towards it, then you can do even bigger and more grand things. And I'd like to give you credit for that. So please don't ever discredit yourself.
Appreciate that.
Absolutely.
I like how you put the persistence and the consistency.
Absolutely, right? So you've had questions if you were doing what you were supposed to be doing. Why didn't you give up?
Oh, I got too much spite for the system.
Sometimes.
The truth is, I got some spite for the system, and so it's like at this point, it's like if I don't succeed, I am now part of your winning statistic because the system's not broken. That's the thing. People are like, oh, the healthcare system's broken. This is broken. They're not broken. They're running exactly as they were built to. It's just from our perspective, it's broken, but it's not built with our perspective in mind. We come last, and so. So definitely some spite in there because so that's its own little monkey on its back because especially since I've become educated, when the veil that was over your eyes is lifted and you see what people that you were led to trust were doing to you. Like I can almost right now, like I'm like near, like this is like even just thinking about it. And so it's like, I can't ever let something that I would consider to be one of the most evil things that I've ever experienced beat me.
Yeah.
And then it won't. Yeah. So like, yeah, that's probably the driving force right there.
Well, it's good though. You took something very negative and turned it into something positive.
Yeah.
Another reason why you should be giving yourself credit for continuing to do it, because most people would have quit. They would have given up and then they would be in that prison cell submitting to the mental prison they've created for themselves.
Yep. And the mental prison doesn't leave.
No.
We have mental prison. You have to be in prison to be in prison. And that's the message you've been, putting out there.
Right. Like you have your opportunity and you're proving it, like, right? Like you're proving that you can do something different. What do you think about when you wake up first thing in the morning?
My devotional and my clients.
Interesting.
So my new habit that I started about a month and a half ago, I'm like, 4 out of 5 days I hit it a week, and it's my devotional. So it's only like 10, 15 minutes.
Okay.
But it has literally helped transform my entire life. Like in just a month and a half, I'm already a smiley person, but now I smile even more.
Nice.
I'm generally I have a good attitude. But now, because every day I'm reminded of these little principles and these little things, it's interesting how that's feeding my spirit.
I like
and
that.
So my clients in that, and I've had to take a step to try and pull away from my phone because I'm trying to deprogram myself from going straight to the technology, wiring my brain as that being my first interaction for the day. I'm not a neuroscientist, but all I know is that it can't be too good in the long run.
Well, addiction's addiction, right?
Yeah.
Like doing meth in the beginning probably didn't think it was going to be addictive.
I didn't.
Boy, that shit grabs a hold, don't it?
Yep. I was just, yep. Oh man, you just took me back right there. Had no clue.
Yeah.
I had no clue.
So like how easy is it that for us to get programmed into a dependency, right? Whether it's a drug or a phone or even a person, like we can get so locked into having this belief that I have to be with this person. And then when that doesn't work out, it's detrimental, right?
Yep. Well, and you can take that concept to welfare as well and all these other things. There's so many ways to get people dependent. And when someone's dependent on you, you almost own them.
Right. Absolutely. I would go as far as you do own them.
Yep.
Because the minute that you remove that resource, now all of a sudden they don't know how to live without it.
Yep. Yeah. And now they'll bend to your will. Yep. Not all the time, but you know what I'm saying.
Well, absolutely. So if there's something out there that an advice that you would give to a man on how he could live a better quality of life?
Don't run from the darkness. Face it, because you're going to get tired.
Absolutely. How do you deal with uncomfortable situations?
Well, it depends. Like, this is an uncomfortable situation.
Okay.
It's a little bit, uneasy. Got cameras, got lights, talking to you. So obviously the setting's a little unfamiliar, but that's literally how you get familiar. So that's how you get comfortable. So to get comfortable, you got to go through the discomfort. If you want to be successful, you're probably going to have to fail a few times first. So yeah.
Interesting. I like to use fitness as an opportunity to embrace the uncomfort, because in reality with fitness, it's never comfortable. As the weight gets easy, you have to challenge yourself further, and we have to continue to push and push and push to be better. So embracing the uncomfort becomes the comfort. Knowing that it's uncomfortable is like, oh, I'm doing something right now. I'm challenging myself when you have the right direction. How did you decide what it is that you wanted to be doing in your life?
I just knew what I didn't want, and that only left one way.
No, that's great though.
That's simple. After the decision was made, it's like, well, I don't want this, and the only way to not have that is to go this way.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of been my just like move forward. It doesn't mean I'm perfect, but it's So I mean, like you said at the beginning, insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting different results. And at some point, especially after over 7+ years incarcerated, all these different experiences, multiple overdoses, all sorts of crazy stuff that I did or experienced, having guns pulled on me, all sorts of crazy stuff. At some point, you've had enough.
Mm-hmm. You suffered enough, right? And you're like, I submit to doing something different.
Yes, please, anything. Just take the wheel. I don't want it anymore.
Right. Which is an interesting concept, because most people are so out of control with their life, they try to control everything else out around them. And the minute they let go of that control outside of them and control what's in them, they find the resolve that they're looking for.
Oh yeah.
What was the first decision that that really drove you into making that trip? Like, when did you commit to that?
So when I left to meet my birth mom and get sober,
Yeah.
So I had about probably it was like 2 or 3 times up to that point, I had told myself I was going to leave, but I didn't. And so I talked myself out of it because I'm in addiction.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm as far into a meth addiction as you can go. Like, you can't put any more of that stuff in your body now. So I'm full into an addiction, and there was literally it was just that phone just got shut off. Car, literally within the next 2 weeks, they're going to be coming and getting it, repoing it. And so that decision was just basically, I've wanted to leave multiple times. I know that if I left about 30 minutes past, I won't leave. And so I literally, in the moment, just threw all my stuff in a bag and left. That was literally how I left, because I knew in that moment that if I gave myself any time, I was not going to leave. I was going to talk myself out of it again. So I left. It was like 8:30, 8 p.m. Left, went to Park City, slept in a Walmart parking lot in Park City, and that's when my journey started. And then I went through Wyoming and all that stuff. I had to overdraft my credit card. I didn't even have gas to get there. I had $13 to my name. And this is when I started to believe in God, because I didn't realize everything that's happening around me. But with $13, I made it 1,700 miles in 7 days, no phone, no car insurance, no license. And so I was and I got pulled over too. And when they ran my ID, it came back as a valid driver's license. And I had just gotten a ticket not too long ago for not having a driver's license. So my journey has had God riddled in it so many times. I never would have met my birth mom had I been pulled over and actually been found, oh, you don't have insurance and you don't have a license,
Interesting.
So it was crazy how that all works.
What happened after you met your birth mom?
So about 6 months later is when I actually got sober. And so I met her. It definitely relapsed again.
Yeah.
And so, but closure happened. Peace came into my heart. Resentment that I once held against her for things that are not her fault was taken away. And so, literally, everything changed in that moment or in that time period because, sorry.
Good.
Everything changed in that time frame because the root of my addiction was abandonment. It was, like I have on, forsaken.
Yeah.
So literally this was one of the before I got all my rest of my tattoos, I had forsaken tattooed on my face.
That was the first.
Yeah. So these are the beginnings. And so like, that's where I was. My last tattoo is blessed. So like, that's also interesting how that, yeah. So I'm blessed to have been taken away, and I love my mother, even though she, her life went the way it did because she was 13 when I was born.
Oh, shit.
Her mom abandoned her because she brought the predator in the house, and then she blamed it on her daughter. So for 4 years, my mom had to repeat cycles of abuse just to survive, and she took care of me for 4 years. And what 13-year-old could you realistically expect to be able to raise a child? So it's like, it was just a huge experience. It wasn't like in the moment, it was over time. And I think having gone through addiction and seeing how women, like how addiction destroyed women, it also gave me insight into my birth mom story, just from a lens of like, you were basically groomed through drugs.
Yeah.
That's literally, she was 8 years old being groomed through drugs.
It's like a perpetuated cycle, right?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's a very courageous man right there to cross the United States and face some very uncomfortable situation.
Oh yeah.
Damn.
Oh yeah. And I was going to turn back multiple times too. I had multiple opportunities to turn back on that drive too, because it was an uncomfortable drive, sleeping in my car, running out of gas in a snowstorm.
And then facing the withdrawal of not being on meth.
I had to pull over and sleep because I hadn't slept.
Yeah.
So I was driving. I learned really quick that driving while you're tired is the most unsafe thing you could do. So then I would start to pull over and I would just fall asleep.
Yep.
Didn't matter where I was at. Pulling over is safer than staying on the road.
Yep. But you want to be upside down in your car.
Sober and dead because I was tired.
Interesting. So what have you learned from that whole experience? Like, do you look at people differently?
No. I look at life differently.
Oh.
It's like our first 18 years of life. So have you ever heard of the 4 agreements?
Yeah.
So basically the first 18 years of our life, our identity is of course internally being created, but it's externally being created. And so after those 18 years, now you're out of mom and dad's house and the environment that created you. And now you have to undo all of man's free will that you experienced. And so I see life almost as like the first part is you're just 100% susceptible to man's free will. But then as you get older, then you have the opportunity to basically undo it. And that's the rest of your life, undoing everything that other people wired into you. And so the rest of your life, you're going to have insecurities. You're going to have all this. And that's, the other 60 years of your life, undoing what the first 18 did to you.
All that deprogramming. Who knew that the first 18 would be so monumental, right?
Well, 1 through 4.
Absolutely.
1 through 4. Like I was 6 when I got adopted. I was 4 when I was taken away. I was 6 when I was adopted. 1 through 4 are the most imperative to the neurological development of a child. Yeah. That's basically the rest of their life. Not definitively defined, but generally speaking, you got a playing field. You can kind of estimate now where they're going to go.
It's interesting too that what information's being given to those kids at this time period in our life, and the manipulation that's available for them, it's kind of sad in a way, because we live in a time where we have as much information that we could create a world that we could all be happy in, but instead we're greedy and insecure, so we create a reality that doesn't benefit anyone because we're scared. What do you do to help other people get through their insecurities?
That's a good question. I mean, awareness is, if you don't have awareness, you're never going to move. You're going to be stagnant, complacent. So, I mean, it's just like that look, an addiction where you're just like, look at yourself and you're just in that moment. All the other times you're not being real with yourself, but in that split second, you're like so real with yourself. Like you want to kill yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And so, it just comes down to the awareness. And, I mean, yeah, I don't have the magic answer for that. But I mean, for me, that's part of my life journey. You know what I mean? Insecurities, especially like social insecurities. I got a whole country that they don't individually hate me, but democratically, y'all hate me.
Mm-hmm. It was interesting when we got to meet physically for the first time at the Accelerated Business Conference. It was an interesting moment to see you smile.
Why?
Because one of the last things that we left off on was your fear of the judgment of the tattoos that you had. And one of the things that I tried to implement into you was the belief that it's part of the thing that makes you great. It's what separates you from everybody else. But the way you carry yourself is what defines who you are. And if you're carrying a chip on your shoulder that it's negative, then that's how people are going to perceive you. And so to see you smile is showing that you're like, you know what? I'm not that limitation. I'm somebody great and I offer something great to the world.
Well, could I share with you a huge nugget around that?
Sure, bro.
So I just got my pathway cleared. So I have a presidential institute backing me right now for my pardon. So I have to go through the federal system and the state system to get my pardons taken away. But I now have like political capital support for my pardon. Most people can't get a pardon.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's biggest myth. If you think pardons are easy to get, you're tripping. Otherwise, everyone would be getting them.
Mm-hmm.
So I won't have anything against me. By the end of 2024, I hope and pray to God that I'm not a felon anymore, because that's been my number one block to housing.
Yeah.
I'm in college, working full time, can't get housing.
Interesting.
So that's just my big update. I can't wait for it. The limitations, it feels like they are being removed, whether they're internal or external. The path is being cleared.
Well, like I said in the beginning, your actions determine what you deserve. And I believe that if you keep doing the stuff to try to give back and create a better narrative for yourself, then you deserve getting that pardon. But if you stop, you don't deserve shit.
I agree with you.
You deserve to be a felon.
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't deserve crap if I stop.
Absolutely.
At this point, there's no excuses. At this point, I wouldn't be able to look myself in the mirror for the rest of my life. If I were to stop right now, the only thing I can see on the other side of that is suicide. Like that's like how out of like, I don't know, like the realm of possibilities quitting is.
Yeah. Good.
You know what I mean?
Good.
Like I've been homeless like 3 times in the past year and a half. It's one of the times with thousands of dollars, but I didn't want to spend it on a hotel just because Utah won't let me rent housing because I have a criminal record from 9 years ago.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Which is a disservice, especially if you're showing the steps to that I want to be better.
Yeah. Yeah. That's part of the reason I dropped out of college too, because I realized, okay, they might have a couple things here, but they don't actually care about me.
No, you're a
They
number.
don't. Yeah.
You're an income.
Yep.
And all too often, I think we limit ourselves to that.
Yep.
It's kind of sad in a way, but in the same sense, it really puts the narrative of how hard are you willing to work for it. And the harder you're willing to work for it, the more likely you're not going to give it up.
Yep.
And so that speaks true to your character. And once again, why you deserve to get what you get. You either are going to fucking do the work or you're not, and you're not going to get shit. It's like why I drove 40 plus minutes to pick you up.
You did, man. Oh, man.
And that's
Blessings, man. Thank you.
And that's the point, because people out there need to see a prime example of what's possible if you do the work, even though you've been set with some limitations. So if you're out there right now and maybe you're incarcerated, Maybe you made some bad decisions or got stuck with the wrong person and put you in jail. Your life's not over unless you choose for it to be over. And you can do something different with your life, but you have to choose to do different and take different steps. Is there any advice that you would give to someone that was in your situation or is in your situation right now that's like facing like this question, should I do something different with my life?
Start reading books. My self-development journey of education, learning how I think, habits, Atomic Habits is my like number one most read book. And so understanding how you can start to leverage your environment, start to learn and understand how I love sociology. It's why part of the reason I studied it. Understand how social behavior really functions on like the non-tangible level.
Mm-hmm.
So how people behave, because once you understand how we all behave, you can now start to navigate and maneuver yourself in a way that will start to help you get different results. But unless you're aware of what is affecting you and impacting you, you're gonna be hit with all these resistances, but it's because you can't see it because you're not educated about it. And so reading was probably at the beginning was the number one catalyst to really making strides, because I had to understand how I thought and behaved. And until I learned that, I just didn't understand enough to change.
It's interesting that he brings up reading, because reading is a part of media that we take in as information. So I would further that by suggesting that you assess the other information that you take in, whether it's music, because you could be listening to music that sets you in a direction to do something that's not beneficial to you. Like I grew up on gangster rap, and that put me in a situation if I thought that I was a gangster. Was not. No one's a gangster unless you're brought up into that, and that's the life that you're forced to live, and you can still choose to do different when you get older. Television, a lot of people are sucked up into this political bullshit right now when we could all choose to step away from the narrative and actually support each other and help each other out, be the best versions of ourselves, not based on a gang color, whether you're liberal or conservative or Democratic or Republican. It's all bullshit. And start consuming information that's beneficial to being the man that we want to be remembered as. So is there a way that anyone out there watching this could get in contact with you if they want some support or some guidance or just want to talk to you?
Yeah. LinkedIn. That's it's Ty Shane. And if you, reach out to me on LinkedIn.
This dude's a beast on LinkedIn. And, normally you would think that the guys on LinkedIn are some prim and proper, like business CEO types. This dude is a prim and proper fucking AI type that will take your marketing to a whole nother level. So if you're out there questioning your future, questioning your actions, and you don't necessarily know what it is that you need to do, don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to do something different with your life, because you're worth it, and your family deserves a better version of you. Your community deserves a better version of you. But in the end, you deserve to be the best version of yourself. And I want to thank you for watching the Man Up and Own It podcast. And I hope you got something out of this conversation today to become the best version of yourself.